In the past few galactic rotations, the study of human behavior and physiology has become something of a scientific obsession. What began as a curiosity, primitive bipeds from a volatile blue planet, quickly escalated into a cross-disciplinary phenomenon. Today, the Intergalactic Journal of Biology and Mechanics routinely publishes dozens of articles each quarter on the topic. These studies, authored by biologists, engineers, tacticians, and even linguists, all circle around the same question. How did Homo sapiens become the most dominant apex predator on a Class A1 death world? It's not simply intelligence. Plenty of sentient species across the known systems display high cognitive function. Some even surpass humans in abstract reasoning, memory capacity, or computational skill. But humans have a unique combination of traits, physical and mental, that work together to form something almost evolutionarily improbable. Above all, it's their resilience, their durability, and their knack for turning even the most mundane biological functions into weapons of survival. Take, for example, the seemingly simple act of throwing. Yes, many creatures across the stars can hurl objects. A few even use thrown weapons in combat or hunting, but none do it like humans. The precision, the velocity, the sheer biomechanical orchestration. Among known species, humans are the only ones capable of generating high-speed, high-accuracy projectile throws using only the upper body, without biological propulsion systems or specialized anatomical features like tail slings or pneumatic bladders. The human throwing mechanism is a biomechanical masterpiece. It starts with the foot, a subtle twist of pressure through the sole, and travels up the leg in a rising coil of potential energy. The hips torque next, rotating the pelvis into alignment with the shoulder girdle, which serves as a dynamic platform. The spine stores rotational force. The scapula, uniquely mobile in humans, allows fine-tuned shoulder adjustments. Elbow and wrist then execute a precise whip motion, ending in a final, explosive snap of the fingers. The timing is so exact that even millisecond deviations can radically alter accuracy. This is not just motor coordination. It is purpose-driven physics embedded in flesh and bone, and the results speak for themselves. In one notable human sport called baseball, trained individuals known as pitchers regularly launch dense projectiles at speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour toward a target roughly the size of a dinner plate. They do this with such accuracy that elite athletes can consistently land a ball within an invisible three-dimensional strike zone, despite the distance, wind, fatigue, and the psychological pressure of tens of thousands of onlookers. Why would such a capacity evolve? Leading theories diverge. One camp believes this ability was crucial for early human hunting, allowing primitive hunters to bring down faster, more agile prey with ranged attacks. Another theory suggests a deeper neurological overlap between throwing and language acquisition, both of which involve complex timing and coordination across brain hemispheres. Either way, the trait persisted, thrived, and eventually was honed into sport, ritual, and war. Technology only made it worse. Humans didn't stop with rocks. They built slings, then spears, then slingshots, arrows, cannons, missiles, guns, drones. Each new layer of tech was just an extension of their core, biological impulse. Pick something up, aim it, and put it through your enemy at speed. But what remains most remarkable, what continues to baffle non-human researchers, is that even without these tools, stripped of tech and left with only their limbs, humans are still deadly. This singular capability became all too clear during the campaign on Daxton. But that, of course, is for the field reports. What matters for now is this. There are species that fly. There are species that shift shape. There are species that walk through walls, move mountains, and live for centuries. And yet, among all the known intelligent life in the galaxy, only one has perfected the art of throwing something with intent to kill, and made it beautiful. That species is human, and they are terrifying. Krill hated war. He hated the dirt and smoke, hated crouching in makeshift holes with his limbs folded under him, hated the distant thunder of weapons and the closer, sharper cries of pain. Most of all, he hated being on the front lines when he was meant to be on a ship, ideally with hot tea and zero chances of being shot at. None of this had been his idea. The Galactic Assembly, in its infinite and often reckless wisdom, had declared intervention on the planet Daxton. The Kree warlords had subjugated the native Bonte species for decades, and the Assembly had finally decided to act, likely for political reasons more than ethical ones. Regardless, every available unit within 5 quadrants was conscripted. Every human unit, that is. Because after the Drev War, where human intervention had narrowly prevented total disaster, the Assembly had fallen back on a strategy that was brutally simple. Throw humans at it until it stops being a problem. Krill served aboard the UNC Stabby, a freelance ship with a freelance crew. They went where the money was. This time the money was on Daxton. And unfortunately, so was Krill. Captain Adam Vare had tried to explain it to him, about duty, about helping others, about standing up against injustice. Krill had listened. He wasn't heartless. He believed in helping people, just not like this. Not with bullets and fire and broken bodies. Now they were stuck in the worst kind of battlefield stalemate. Both sides stranded, both sides armed with nothing. A wide canyon split the ground, cracked open by seismic activity during the early stages of the campaign. It stretched nearly 20 feet across and dropped into thick fog that swallowed light and sound. Reinforcements couldn't cross. Drones couldn't fly in the dense interference field. Supplies were gone. Ammunition was gone. Even the medkits had run dry. The humans were dug in on one side of the canyon. The Kree soldiers, tall, plated with 4 limbs and heavy armor, occupied the other. They were just close enough to see each other, too far to attack, too proud to retreat. So they yelled. Insults had taken the place of gunfire. It began as tactical jeering, standard morale playbook stuff. Then it escalated. The Kree burned through their library of galactic standard curses within the hour. After that, they defaulted to their native tongue, chittering and clanging their armored limbs. But humans were infinite. Krill didn't know where they kept it all. The insults just kept coming. Creative, brutal, often incomprehensible. Apparently, part of the insult's impact came not just from the words, but from the tone, the rhythm, the sheer force of cultural spite packed into a few sentences. Krill understood maybe 1 in 10, and he understood just enough to know he never wanted any of it directed at him. Still, for all the noise, nothing had changed. Until it did. The insult came from the other side, a Kree officer, tall and broad, who stepped forward from the line. His translator was faulty, or maybe deliberately scrambled, because what came through was barely intelligible. But the parts Krill did catch were enough to turn his blood cold. It was about Captain Vere, about his heritage, about his parental unit, specifically his mother. And something about the infant stage of human development, larvae or children or babies. Krill couldn't make out the full meaning, but the effect was instant. Silence. Total, utter silence from the human line. Krill had never seen a species freeze like that. Every human went still. Faces that were animated moments ago turned blank and hard. Even Captain Vere, normally impossible to rattle, looked changed. He didn't yell, he didn't flinch. He just looked across the chasm at the one who'd spoken. Then he turned, motioned one of the soldiers forward. Private Morales came jogging up, followed by his twin brother. Krill recognized them, quiet, competent types. He listened in as the captain leaned closer. "You pitched, right? Back home?" The soldier blinked. "Yeah, sir. Minor leagues." "How good?" The twin jumped in, grinning. "Amazing. Would have gone pro if it weren't for the accident. Still got the arm, though." Captain Vere didn't smile. He crouched, picked up a stone about the size of his fist. He weighed it, tested the grip, then pointed across the chasm at the Kree who'd insulted him. "How about a fastball down the center?" The private took the stone, eyes narrowing. The grin faded into something darker. He walked to a slight rise in the ground. The other soldiers instinctively backed away, giving him room. The Kree didn't understand. They stood there, confused and amused, watching a lone human go through a series of odd motions, stretching, rolling his shoulder, shifting his weight. Then the wind changed. Krill's cortical centers fired in a cascade. He recognized the movement, the sequence, the stored energy. What happened next took less than a second. The private stepped into the throw. His entire body snapped forward in a motion so fluid it seemed impossible for a creature made of bone and muscle. His foot slammed down, his hips torqued, his spine twisted. His arm came around like a whip, elbows snapping at just the right moment, fingers releasing at the exact instant of peak acceleration. The rock became a missile. There was a wet crack, a flash of yellow, and the Kree officer's head ceased to exist. The body dropped in silence, and then the screaming started. Krill had seen humans fight before, but this was something else. The entire line surged forward. Stones flew like a storm. Not random, not wild, targeted. Precision throws, one after another. Every man and woman became a living weapon. The Kree tried to flee. Some jumped into the canyon. Others ran for cover. It didn't matter, the rocks found them. To Krill's right, a human woman stepped forward with a different technique, arms swinging in a tight underhand arc, launching her stone in a high spinning loop. It connected with the throat of a Kree lieutenant, dropping him instantly. And then, from somewhere in the back, a voice called out, "Hey, anyone got the materials for a trebuchet. Because of course, because that's what humans do. Krill sat there, stunned, as the battlefield turned into a massacre. The ground across the chasm was a carpet of broken exoskeletons and limp limbs. Not one human had crossed the canyon. Not one had been touched. Captain Vare walked past him, casually rotating his shoulder. "Thank the Lord for middle school PE," he said. Krill had no words, only the deep, unsettling understanding that they were never going to study this in the Intergalactic Journal. Because if they did, no one would believe it. There are moments that change the course of history. Not grand declarations, not interstellar treaties signed in gold leaf halls, not even the final detonations of world-ending bombs. Sometimes history turns on the quiet whoop of a rock slicing through the air at impossible speed. On the fractured battlefield of Daxton, one such moment arrived with the swing of a human arm. The Kree never saw it coming. Not really. How could they? For all their war-born arrogance, for all the years they'd spent dominating weaker species, they never imagined they'd be undone by an unarmed man and a stone. Their general, a towering slab of armor and cruelty, stood grinning across the chasm as the humans fell silent. Then silence broke, and a head exploded. The rock struck with the precision of a weapon forged in a lab, but it hadn't been forged. It had been picked up from the dirt. And the soldier who'd thrown it hadn't been born in a military academy or grown in a vat. He'd come from a place called Brooklyn, played a sport called baseball, and carried with him the kind of training no alien strategist had ever considered lethal. It took less than a second for the general to die. It took exactly 2 more for the rest of the Kree to realize what was happening. By then, it was far too late. What followed wasn't war. It wasn't even battle. It was a reckoning. The humans didn't charge blindly. They didn't need to. They held their ground and let their arms do the work. Rock after rock sang through the air, each one an arc of biomechanical poetry, ending in impact and bone-deep terror. They moved like a chorus, feet shifting, shoulders rolling, hips snapping. There was rhythm to it, almost music, like something ancient, something primal, something that didn't belong in the data-sterile playbooks of galactic war councils. The Kree line shattered. They ran, or tried to, screaming, tripping, colliding with each other in their panic. And still the stones came. Krill watched, paralyzed, not from fear, not even from the blood, but from the reality of it. This wasn't what the Academy had taught. The textbooks were filled with diagrams and categories, species types, intelligence levels, known threats. Humans had been filed under volatile but manageable, a warning label, not a doomsday button. But that label didn't explain this. It didn't explain how they'd turned an evolutionary quirk into a battlefield advantage so brutal, so wildly disproportionate, that a superior force collapsed in minutes without a single human crossing enemy lines. It didn't explain the madness of their inventiveness, the way one had started gathering supplies for a trebuchet mid-fight, like this was just the warm-up round of a much bigger joke. It didn't explain why Krill, scientist, pacifist, surgeon, was now too stunned to move, too awed to speak, and too terrified to ever look at a human the same way again. When the last Kree soldier fell, the canyon was quiet. Stones rolled to a stop on blood-slick stone. The mist below hung motionless, as if the very air held its breath. One by one, the humans lowered their arms. Some laughed, some exhaled. One wiped a smear of yellow gore from his cheek and muttered, "Jesus, that got messy." Captain Vare walked back toward Krill, expression unreadable. He didn't gloat, didn't smile. He just reached for his canteen and drank, sweat streaking down the grime on his face. Krill stared at him. "You planned that?" he whispered. Vare didn't answer at first. Then, "Number. I hoped for it." "You knew he could do that?" Vare capped the canteen. "We've all got something in us, Doc. Sometimes it just takes the right kind of stupid to bring it out." Krill looked back across the chasm at the bodies. It wasn't victory he felt. It was something heavier, a shifting in the cosmic order, a species with no wings, no armor, no telepathy, had just used nothing but muscle, memory, and rage to rewrite the rules of engagement. And everyone had watched it happen. Because somewhere in that moment, somewhere between the throw and the thunderous impact, a ripple had started. It would echo across channels and relay stations, across debriefings and war simulations, across frightened whispers in backroom councils. They would talk about Daxton, about the massacre, about the throw, and they would realize slowly and collectively that in the heart of this chaotic, unruly species lived a kind of genius that wasn't quiet or refined. It was raw, ugly, brilliant, and it had just declared itself in the language of war. Not with lasers, not with fire, with a rock. The throw heard across the stars, and that was only the beginning.